The worst part wasn't finding them together. The worst part was that my best friend of 15 years looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were going to lose her anyway." That was 8 months ago. I've had a lot of time to think about what that sentence means. And I've had a lot of time to think about everything that came before it. All the signs I missed. All the dinners where they sat across from each other. All the times I thought the distance I felt from my wife was just the stress of buying a house, starting a business, being an adult. I thought we were going through something together. Turns out they were going through something together. Just not with me. My name is not important. What matters is this. I was 31 years old. I had a mortgage on a 4-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio. I had a wife named Paige, and I had a best friend named Donovan, who I'd known since we were 16 and sharing a locker in the same hallway, at the same high school, in the same small town in central Ohio. We grew up together. We were in each other's weddings. He was my best man. I was his groomsman 2 years earlier, when he married a woman named Steph, who eventually left him because, as she told mutual friends, he had a pattern. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I know exactly what it means now. Paige and I had been married for 3 years when I found out. We'd been together for 5 before that. 8 years total. I thought I knew everything about her. The way she had to fold the corner of a page before she put a book down. The way she'd hum to herself when she was making coffee. The way she always apologized to dogs she bumped into accidentally. I thought I knew her completely. I didn't know anything. The thing about finding out is that it never happens the way you think it will. It's not one dramatic moment. It's a series of small things that you keep explaining away, and then one day you stop explaining, and you just see. For me, it started with a gas station receipt. I was going through our joint account at the end of October. I do the budget every month, always have. And there was a charge at a Shell station on side of towns. $12.40. Nothing unusual except that Paige had told me she'd been home that whole day. She'd said she was working from home. Her car was in the driveway when I left for work. But the Shell station was 12 miles away, and the charge was at 11:47 in the morning. I didn't say anything. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she'd moved her car and I hadn't noticed. Maybe the charge was old, and just cleared late. I told myself a lot of things. 2 weeks later, I found a text on her phone. I wasn't snooping, I want to be clear about that. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, face up, and a message came in while I was standing right there. I saw 3 words before the screen went dark. 3 words that I kept turning over for the next week, before I did anything about them. The name at the top of the thread was Donovan. I didn't confront her. I know some people would have. Some people would have picked up that phone and scrolled back 6 months and read everything. But I didn't. Something in me, something cold and quiet that I didn't know I had, said, wait, get more, know everything before you say anything. So I waited. I started paying attention differently. I noticed that every Tuesday evening when I worked late, Paige said she was going to her sister's. I called her sister Renee, in early November on a Tuesday at 7:30, just to ask if she had a good recipe for the turkey brine I was planning for Thanksgiving. Renee said, "Oh, I haven't seen Paige in probably a month, we've just been texting. Why, is everything okay?" I told her yes. Everything was fine. I hung up and sat in my parked car, in the parking garage at work for 20 minutes. I need you to understand what that felt like. That specific Tuesday evening, sitting in a cold parking garage in November, knowing that my wife was not at her sister's, and that my best friend, who I had just texted that morning about football, was probably exactly where my wife was. That is a specific kind of alone that I had never felt before and hope I never feel again. It's not loud, it's not angry yet. It's just quiet and cold, and it sits in your chest like swallowed glass. I didn't go home. I drove to a bar I'd never been to, ordered a beer I didn't finish, and called my dad. He picked up on the second ring, which is unusual because he usually falls asleep in front of the TV by 8. I told him I thought Paige was cheating. I didn't say who with. He was, for a long time, and then, he said, "What do you need from me?" And I said, "I don't know yet." He said, "Okay, I'm here whenever you figure it out." That was it, no advice, no drama, just, "I'm here." I went home an hour later. Paige was on the couch watching something on her laptop with her headphones in. She smiled when I came in and said I looked tired. I said I was. She asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. We sat together for an hour before bed, and I watched her make the tea and bring it to me. And I thought about how I'd known this woman for 8 years. And I couldn't tell if she was lying to me. That was the most disorienting thing. Not the betrayal. The fact that I couldn't tell. The following Tuesday I worked from home and told her I was going into the office. I watched her leave at 7:15 in the evening. I gave it 5 minutes. Then I got in my car and I followed her. She drove to Donovan's apartment. He lived in a complex off Henderson Road, 2nd floor, Unit 214. I knew the layout because I'd helped him move in 2 years ago. I'd carried his damn couch up those stairs. I parked across the street and I watched her go in through the main entrance. I sat there for 45 minutes. Then I went home. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to my wife in the bed we'd bought together from a furniture store in Dublin and I made a list in my head. Not an emotional list, a practical one. I am a project manager. I manage complicated timelines for a living. I know how to break a problem into steps, so I broke this problem into steps. Step 1, confirm it wasn't a one-time thing. Step 2, understand the financial exposure. Step 3, consult a lawyer before saying a single word. Step 4, act. Over the next 2 weeks I confirmed step 1 3 more times, Tuesdays and one Thursday. I didn't take photos. I didn't need to, I knew. For step 2, I spent a weekend going through every account. We had a joint checking, a joint savings, a joint account for house expenses, and our individual retirement accounts. The house was in both our names. We'd bought it 18 months earlier for $340,000. We'd put $60,000 down, most of which came from my savings and a small inheritance from my grandfather. I documented all of it. Step 3. I called a family law attorney on a Thursday morning, from my car, before I went into the office. Her name was Beverly. A referral from a colleague, who'd been through a divorce 2 years ago. I told her the basic facts. She told me what I needed to know. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, not a 50-50 state, which meant the inheritance contribution could matter, she said. Say nothing to your spouse until we meet in person. So I said nothing. I met with Beverly the following week. I brought my documentation. She walked me through everything. What the process would look like, what my rights were regarding the house, what we could argue given the source of the down payment. She was calm and matter-of-fact in a way that I needed. I left that meeting feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 weeks. Like I had solid ground under me. Then I called my dad again. And this time, I told him everything. He went quiet in a different way than the first call. When he finally spoke, he said, "Does your mother know?" And I realized that was his first question, not about Donovan, not about the money, but about whether my mom already knew something he didn't. I said I didn't think so. He said he was going to come visit. Not ask, he said it as a statement. He drove 4 hours from Akron the next Saturday. We sat at my kitchen table while Paige was at a yoga class, and I showed him everything I had and he just listened. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't tell me I should try to work it out. He didn't say anything about keeping the family together, or giving it more time. He just said, "Whatever you decide, I'm behind you." That was all I needed. I told Paige on a Sunday afternoon in December. She'd just gotten back from grocery shopping. The bags were still on the counter. I'd thought a lot about how I was going to say it, and in the end I didn't do any of the speeches I'd rehearsed. I just said, "I know about you and Donovan. I've known for 6 weeks. I've already talked to a lawyer." She didn't deny it. That surprised me a little, though I don't know why I expected anything different. She sat down on one of the kitchen stools, and she looked at the grocery bags, and then at me and she said, "How long have you known?" I said, 6 weeks. She said, "I'm sorry." And I stood there and I thought, she's sorry I found out. She's not sorry it happened. Because if she were sorry it happened, she would have stopped. She would have said something. She had 6 weeks of me knowing and not knowing, and she didn't stop. I said, "I want you out of this house by the end of the month." She started to cry. She said she didn't want to lose what we had. She said it had just happened. That word. Just happened. As if 4 months of Tuesday evenings were something that just occurred to them. I didn't respond to that. I said the name of my attorney and told her she should get her own. Then I went upstairs. What I didn't expect, what I genuinely did not see coming, was my mother-in-law. Paige called her that night. I know because her mother called me at 9:15. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 9:20. I listened to the voicemail 2 days later. She said, "Honey, I know you're hurting, but Paige is my daughter, and I need you to think about what you're doing to this family. These things are complicated. Marriage is complicated. I hope you'll think about counseling before you make any decisions." Her mother had known me for 8 years. She'd sat at my table every Thanksgiving for 3 years. She'd called me the son she never had at our wedding rehearsal dinner. And her first call was about what I was doing to the family. I called her back 2 days later. I told her I appreciated that she cared about her daughter. And that I understood she was going to be on Paige's side. No matter what. Because that was her job as her mother. But I also told her that I was not going to be discussing my marriage with her, and that I hoped she understood that whatever relationship we'd had was something I needed some distance from for a while. She cried. I stayed on the phone until she stopped. Then I said goodbye and hung up. The calls from Donovan started 3 days after I confronted Paige. He called me 6 times in 2 days. I didn't answer. On the 7th call I picked up and I said, "I have nothing to say to you." And I hung up. He texted me after that. A long text. I read it once. He said he was sorry. That it had started as nothing. That he didn't know how to tell me. That he'd been carrying the guilt of it for months. I read the whole thing, and then I deleted it, and I blocked his number. What I want to say about that, what I think is important, is this. I didn't feel the anger I'd expected. I thought I'd want to scream at him, or go to his apartment, or say everything I'd rehearsed. I didn't. What I felt was something colder than anger. It was more like grief. Like standing at a grave for someone who wasn't dead but was gone anyway. 15 years. We'd been 15-year-old kids together. I'd been at his dad's funeral. I'd sat with him in the hospital parking lot when Steph had a miscarriage in their first year of marriage. He knew things about me that I'd never told anyone else, and he'd looked me in the face, every week, for 4 months. And he'd said nothing. That's not a mistake. That's a choice, made over and over. Our friends knew. Not all of them, but some of them. I found out slowly over the next few weeks, through conversations that revealed things people had let slip, or corrected themselves on, or clearly already knew the context for. My buddy from college, a guy named Whitfield, who'd introduced me to Paige originally, called me in January and said he'd heard, and that he was sorry and that he'd known since October, but hadn't known how to bring it up. He said he thought I'd be angry at him. I said I wasn't angry at him, I was just tired. He asked if I wanted to get a beer. We did. We don't talk about Donovan when we hang out. We just talk about other things, that helps. The divorce was filed in January, Beverly handled it, because Paige had moved out and we'd agreed. Through attorneys. Not through any conversation. To list the house and split the proceeds. After my initial down payment contribution was accounted for, the process was cleaner than it could have been. It still took 8 months. Closing costs, attorney fees, the logistics of dividing what we'd built together. The house sold in April for $375,000. After everything, I walked away with a little under $140,000. I'd already found an apartment by then. A 1-bedroom in Clintonville, North Columbus, on the 2nd floor of a building with a decent gym and a parking spot in the back. Monthly rent was $1,400. I could afford it. I was still working, still managing projects, still functioning. People at work mostly didn't know, and I liked it that way. Work was the place where I was just competent and boring and reliable, which was exactly what I needed it to be. The last thing that happened, the thing that probably sealed something permanently, was my mother-in-law calling me in March, 2 months before the divorce was finalized. This time she had a different tone. She wasn't crying. She was controlled, and she told me that Paige had moved back in with him while she figured things out, and that Donovan had also been calling their house. Because apparently Paige had broken things off with him. After everything fell apart. And that he was not dealing with it well. I let her finish talking. Then I said, I'm sorry to hear that. I genuinely hope Paige figures things out. But I'm not involved in any of this anymore, and I'd like to keep it that way. She said, you could have tried harder. And I took a breath and I said, very carefully, I tried for 8 years. I just didn't know I was the only one. She didn't have anything to say to that. I told her I wished her well and hung up. There's nothing satisfying to report about Donovan. He didn't fall apart publicly. He didn't lose his job or move away, or do any of the things that feel narratively right. Last I heard from Whitfield earlier this year, he was still in Columbus, still at the same company, and had started dating someone new. I thought I'd feel something about that. I mostly felt nothing. What I did feel, and what I still feel, is something that took me a long time to name properly. It's not relief exactly, it's more like clarity. The kind of clarity you only get after something strips away every version of your life you thought was real, and you're left standing in an empty house you're about to list, surrounded by furniture that half belongs to someone else. And you realize that you actually know, maybe for the first time, exactly what you will and won't accept. Exactly what you will and won't do. Exactly who you are when everything else has been taken. I moved into the Clintonville apartment on a Thursday in May. My dad drove up from Akron with a rented pickup truck. We moved everything I'd kept in about 3 hours. He helped me put together the bed frame, which had one of those instruction booklets that assumes you have 4 hands. And we spent 40 minutes on the headboard. And at one point he looked at me and said, your grandfather bought me a bed when your mom and I split for those 3 months before you were born. I think about that sometimes. I didn't know that story. I asked him to tell it. We ordered a pizza and sat on the floor because I hadn't unpacked any chairs yet. And he told me about a time in his life I'd never known about, and it was the best evening I'd had in months. I live alone now. I work. I run on a trail along the Olentangy River on weekend mornings. I've started cooking properly, not just reheatings, actually cooking. With cast iron and everything. I talk to my dad about twice a week. I've seen Whitfield a few times. I'm not okay in the way that I used to be okay, where okay meant I wasn't thinking about it. I'm okay in a different way, a quieter way. I don't miss Paige the way I expected to. I miss the version of my life where I thought I knew what was real. But that version of my life wasn't real. It just felt like it was. And I'd rather have the real thing. Even when the real thing is a 1-bedroom apartment in Clintonville with a parking spot in the back. And a cast iron pan I'm still learning to season. I don't think about Donovan very often. When I do, I think about us at 16, sharing that locker, thinking we were going to know each other for the rest of our lives. In a way, we did know each other for the rest of those lives. Those specific lives just ended a few years earlier than I thought they would. There are people in your life who hold part of your story. When they go, that version of the story goes with them. You don't get it back. You just start writing from where you are now, and you try to make sure the next chapter is one you actually chose. That's what I'm doing. One Thursday at a time.